if I can say anything to vets getting out, the library is absolutely your best friend. The difference between attitude and mindset is this: attitude is something you choose, mindset is something that becomes ingrained.
Welcome to Veteran Voices, SITREP, with your hosts, Tom and Chris Faust.
Welcome to Veteran Voices. I am your host, Tom Faust, here with my co-host and son, Chris. As always, the views expressed on this podcast are not necessarily those of Veteran Voices, but oftentimes they are. Today, our guest is Lindy Bryant, and we'll be discussing more or less finding employment and doing so trying to avoid or recover from homelessness. So that's kind of the general topic, and we'll see where that goes. Lindy, would you like to give us a little background on yourself and tell us where you're coming from on this?
Sure. My name is Lindy Bryant. I am an Air Force veteran myself. I spent a lot of years in the United States Air Force and the Air Force Reserves, leaving as a major. I moved over I had been in HR, and then I went into, also commanded an aircraft maintenance squadron. So I had a lot of experience with what is affectionately known as human resources, everybody's favorite department. When I got out, I had kind of gone that direction. And so I ended up spending a total of about 30 years in corporate recruiting and as a hiring manager, and working really, of course, near and dear to my heart, working with veterans and people transitioning out of the military.
Yeah, we talked about the value of companies hiring, and there are a lot of that now.
Yes.
Try and find some links to that as well.
Well, if you go to organizations if you Google it, you can find organizations that specifically are focused on veteran hiring, and they will often have a list of companies that are extremely veteran friendly. And sometimes that's the best place to start.
All right, so let's talk about veteran homelessness in general and what we're trying to either avoid or recover from. I know that some of my notes here, I have statistics as much as 7.4% increase in 2023. That's quite a big increase in homelessness among veterans. And some of the other stats that I've found show that homelessness among veterans is almost twice the rest of the population.
Yeah, well, I think something that people forget too is that if you have been in the military for a decade or two or three, when you get out, you may not have a home base to go back to. You don't necessarily have a whole bunch of friends waiting for you to come back. You don't have a place where you know who's hiring and what companies are what the economic standing is. And that's actually a challenge for people getting out of the military. Is sometimes you're rebuilding your social network from square one. Even if you're staying in the local area, you can no longer go have lunch with your buddies because you can't get on base unless you are a retiree. You can't go to the same stores, or you can't go and have lunch over at the club. You can't shop at the commissary. Those are challenges that can be as much emotional as they are practical.
A lot of it could be attributed to that, where it's really hard to deal with when you've had, and we've mentioned this in other podcasts, is you've had that camaraderie, you've had that teamwork and that brotherhood that you had in the military. And then when you're out of it, everyone's kind of going back to their own homes. And so you're really on your own. That makes it kind of difficult to handle at times, especially the longer you've been in, the more you've been away from the civilian world. So you don't have that foundation, which is where probably a lot of this stems from, or at least kind of the start of the downfall. So, so in your experience, what are some common misconceptions about veteran homelessness?
I think from a company standpoint, a lot of people assume that if someone is a veteran and they're homeless, that A, they're suffering from severe PTSD and are not employable. And that they must be homeless because they want to be, and that they probably don't have any marketable skills. That's kind of the standard assumptions. And sometimes that's a tough thing to get past from a company's viewpoint. Most jobs you have to apply online. If you've got somebody who's homeless, number one, they probably don't have a computer, and number two, they probably don't have internet. So asking somebody to apply online for a job can be a stopper right there. And companies are starting to see that there need to be some alternatives. Maybe they have an open house that you can go and apply on the computer there in their lobby. Ask a company, I don't currently have access to a computer. Do you have a computer I could use to complete my application? A lot of companies will say, absolutely, come on in and we'll sit you down and have a place. Or they'll say, you know what, we know that the local library has free computer service. If I can say anything to vets getting out, the library is absolutely your best friend for 1,000,001 reasons. Yes, it's a nice air conditioned place to go and fill out an application. It's a great place to do research. The librarians often are a wonderful source of information. They may even be able to tell you who your VSO is, who your veteran service officer for your local area is. Any organizations or labor department that maybe has a veteran assistant. Sometimes, like for instance, I'm in North Idaho, and the libraries here will refer you to the county unemployment office. There is a veteran rep in the county unemployment office. That's all he does. That's your new best friend.
That's good to know. Yeah. I know that you yourself said when we talked in our previous discussions that you were homeless for a while and managed to recover from that. And so I know you have some experience in that area. What kind of challenges did you face in trying to balance this out of getting back on your feet?
I lost my job in 2008, as did a lot of people. I was a contract corporate recruiter for a defense firm that basically downsized. And the first thing they did was they let all the recruiters go because they weren't going to be hiring. And so nobody else was going to be hiring either. So nobody was hiring a recruiter. Nobody was hiring HR. Everybody was downsizing. Everybody was laying off. I had a child who was in college at the time. I was a single parent. And I took steps. I mean, I did have a little bit of savings and I had a little bit of a 401k. But first thing I did is I downsized our living conditions. I moved from a beautiful big 2-story townhouse to a small 2-bedroom apartment. And basically, I had to make some hard decisions. And it was tough. I mean, it got to the point where finally I had to have my daughter live with her dad because I couldn't pay the fees, to support her, and ended up renting a room in someone's house. And it took about a week after I said I was going to move in before it was available. So for that week, I was in my car. And showering at the local YWCA, which you can get a 1-week free pass. there's your 1 week that you can get in for that. And basically, you have to think outside the box. I was lucky because I was able to basically call every temp firm I had ever worked with, because as a corporate recruiter, I had hired temp firms to bring people in for me before. So I called every single one of those, probably 24 of them, and said, hey, I just got downsized. Do you have temp work? Do you have any event coming up that you need a 1-day person or a 2-day person. And I pieced together some work. The one thing I would say too is don't expect that your first job out of the chute is going to be a full-time job earning 5-figure, 6 figures. It's not going to happen, especially when we have a tough economy like we're dealing with actually right now. Look for part-time work, be willing to take temp work, and look for volunteer work. That's what I did. I looked for volunteer organizations and for charity organizations that needed volunteers. And I went in and I did a bang up job. I did a really good job. And one of my volunteer organizations took me on as a part-time person. And so I went in and I worked part-time. I filled in for anybody who wasn't able to come in, what have you, really did that, working another part-time job on the side. And one of the people recommended me to a friend of his who then hired me full-time. So I took a job that, when I was desperate though, but I still took a job that didn't pay anything, and put that positive smile on, positive attitude, went in and did absolutely the best job above and beyond what they were asking for. You're going to have to be your own salesperson. And nobody wants to hire you if you are glum and despondent. You've got to be the person that they want to have in their company. And that is something, believe me, I worked for 14 years hiring for call centers, which are basically entry-level jobs in most cases. There were times that our job required, they asked that you have a year's experience in this or what have you. But if I had somebody come in and they were high energy and they were positive and they were smiling and they said, absolutely, I promise I'm going to be here on time every single day. Not a problem. I can pass a drug test. Not a problem. I can take, that's fine. I'll take the evening shift. Not a problem. I'll hire them even if they don't have any experience, because that's somebody that I think is going to be a positive for the company.
Yeah, it's another thing too. It's one of the reasons why the company that I work for, we like to hire veterans, because you might not have the exact skill set, but that can be trained. You can teach somebody the skills to do the job, but being a person that wants to go and get them, that's one of those ones where it's like, okay, not everybody's like that, especially nowadays, which is why I think a lot of companies offer part-time work. It's just, you have the ones that just kind of want to go in there, do things, collect a paycheck, and not really, care. And then you get the ones that's like, hey, I really need this. I want to go get it. Those are the attitudes that we look for. I think that a lot of people look for, because.
Yeah. And we talked, Tom and I talked briefly about attitude versus mindset also. I've recently written a book that is coming out this fall, and one of the entire chapters is on attitude and mindset. The difference between attitude and mindset is this. Attitude is something you choose. You choose what your attitude is going to be every single day and in your interactions with every single person. Mindset is something that becomes ingrained. It is an internalized focus that becomes external in the way people interact with you. And it's caused by repeated attitude. So if you have a negative mindset of, I'm not worth anything, I can't do this, the first thing you need to do is tomorrow when you get up, tell yourself something positive and put on a positive attitude for that day. Do the same thing the next day and the same thing the next day. And before long, you're going to find out that your mindset is changing to being positive, because your mindset is basically a collection of what your attitude has been. So that mindset then becomes automatic, so that when people meet you, they go, okay, well, she's a very positive person. That's without you even thinking about it, without you even consciously saying, I'm going to have a positive attitude. That's automatic because you've been doing it again and again. And that is something that you can actually fix about your personality. There's some things that we are who we are, but your mindset and your attitude are things that you can adjust. You've heard people talking about an attitude adjustment. What they're really saying is that you need to adjust your mindset.
Yeah, I like that. It runs along a couple of different things that I myself kind of go by. It was years ago on a local radio station here, where things are going to happen. So it's basically like a formula: E plus R equals O, which is the event that's going to happen is going to happen, and then you have your reaction to said event, and that's going to equal the outcome. You don't control the event or the outcome, but you can work that way by your reaction toward it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a better outlook on something, it could turn out not as bad as you were, thinking it might be.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go back just a minute when we were talking about employers. For any potential employers that hopefully might be listening to this and have the ability to hire veterans, what do you think are possible ways that employers can help understand the situation and try and help veterans deal with what they need? I'm not sure how I want to ask the question, but what can employers do to get better at feeling good about hiring veterans?
Well, as most employers know, a lot of us work off of job descriptions, okay? They are written. They have to be certified in many cases. You've got to run them past your legal department. They're printed. They're, in the system. It's a very complex thing, and the comp folks judge the salary based on the write-up of the job description. But more and more companies are realizing that not every job, first of all, needs to have a 4-year college degree. Okay. What they're finding is that what they're really wanting to hire is for traits and skills. And that's the important thing. If you are hiring, for instance, for a call center, then you know that a person's smile and their attitude are worth far more than the fact that they've worked for 2 call centers in the past. You're going to put them through training anyway. Even if they've worked for another call center, when they come in, you're still going to put them through a 6-week training. So they'll learn how to use the screen. It's not a big deal. It's more important that that person knows that when they pick up the phone, they're smiling, because that smile is heard. I've worked for defense contractors, and when we brought in military people, some people went, this is an IT type position, and I'm not sure. You know what? They've worked with the same system. Yeah, they may not have sat in that chair and worked in that department before, but they have the skill set and they have the security clearance and they have a very positive attitude, and they're willing to come in and show you that they can do it. So a lot of times companies are starting to see that attitude and traits are more important than lines on a resume. I've worked with so many companies that say, yeah, absolutely, we want to hire veterans. And I said, okay, what kind of outreach are you doing? We post our jobs here, here, and here. No, that's not the question. What kind of outreach? How are you actually interacting with the veterans community? And that is where someone like myself comes into the mix and says, okay, were you aware that there is this event, that there is a Hiring Our Heroes job fair, that there is, the unemployment office has a veteran rep that, we can go to him and give him our job descriptions and say, do you have anybody who might be interested in these jobs? Finding out what's out there. And, sometimes, as the old saying goes, it's tough if you don't know what questions to ask. They say, well, just ask. Ask what? Ask who? Yeah. So that is sometimes something that I also impress on the VSOs and the veterans reps. I said, keep your ear to the ground. If you hear that there's a new project coming, reach out to the company that's going to be getting that contract and say, hey, listen, I've got some veterans that you might want to talk to. Because companies also, there's a program, I'm not going to go into all the details of it, but basically they get tax breaks if they hire veterans, significant tax breaks, like $2,500 to $5,000 a year if their office hires a veteran. So it's to their advantage to hire veterans. What the veteran needs to do is present themselves in such a way that they are an asset to this company. So it needs to be a win-win, but it is definitely doable. If you don't have any skills, again, fall back on the fact that attitude can sometimes get you across a door. Look for part-time work. There are temp agencies all over the place that are looking for day laborers. Now, that may not be what you're looking for right now, but if you go in and you fill out the application and you show up on time with the attitude and you work hard, they're going to call you back again because they have another job that's coming up tomorrow or next week, and you're going to be the first one they think of.
So kind of going along those lines of, things that, what, companies are doing. How do you think, so one of the biggest things for veterans, and we've mentioned this before, is having a support system, someone to kind of help you deal with things or help you navigate the world as it is that's completely different from when you joined the military. So, support networks and resources. How do you think employers can create, effective support systems for veteran employees?
That can be tough. And it's not always the company that's doing it, but there are other organizations in the community that may interact with companies. And that's where you get things such as, here in the area that I'm in, we have a couple of mega churches that actually have veteran support groups within them. And part of what those support groups do is they interact with companies that are hiring and find out when there's going to be openings, and they can route the veterans over or at least connect the folks to talk to them. I would also say watch for nonprofits or charity organizations in the area that advertise veteran connections. Here in North Idaho, we have what's known as the Veteran Stand Down. It's an annual event where all sorts of companies come together for a day at a local large area, and they do everything from give haircuts and medical checkups to they have companies who come and are hiring, and they're open to hiring veterans. So you can show up, get a haircut, a free pair of shoes, get your blood pressure checked, and get a job. And, again, I would say you need, wherever you're at, if you're a veteran, you need to find out who your veteran service organization is. That is through your county. Find out who your VSO is and go pay them a visit. Sit down and say, hey, listen, I'm having a hard time. I haven't been able to find a job. Where do I start? They have places they can refer you to. They have all sorts of ideas. They have programs. Sometimes they have funds available to assist. Another thing here in North Idaho, we have a thrift shop called New Beginnings, and it's spelled N-E-W-B-Y Ginnings. And it's based on, there was a Army guy, last name was Newby, who was killed in Afghanistan. And in his memory, his family started a veteran-only thrift shop. If you are a veteran, you show up with your 214 and you show it to them, and they go, and they usher you in and absolutely everything: food, clothing, gear, books, dishes, everything is free to you. You can have anything you want for free. Look in your local area and find out if there's also times Goodwill or other organizations may have a Veterans Day that is 50% off or more. Look for those type of organizations that are reaching out. They may not publicize them very well. You may have to watch for it, but make, you're going to have to be doing some digging. You're going to have to go out there and be proactive. But the attitude nationwide right now is very supportive of veterans. Much better than in the past. I have a brother who was a Vietnam vet, and when he came back, there was no support, none. By the time I was in and I went through Desert Storm, totally different. There was a lot of support, no problem. Now it's pretty well integrated into corporate America, as well as the support in the counties and your cities and things like that. They're actively trying to reach out to veterans. Sometimes they don't know how to find you, so you may need to find them.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things of needing to raise awareness about, one, the veteran homelessness issue and the challenges of transitioning to civilian life. But it's one of those ones where the word needs to get out there because, one, veterans might not know about it, or, two, companies might not know how to put the information out there. So it's a matter of needing to find a way to provide the information because, they might not have, access to internet to watch this YouTube video or anything like that.
They don't have Facebook. They don't necessarily catch the Facebook ads. You're going to have to, as a company, you've got to figure out, how can I reach the veterans? And as a veteran, you've got to go, okay, if I were a company, how would I be reaching out to me? And that's where I say, keep going back and, look for veterans organizations, look for the counties really are the movers and shakers when it comes to veteran interactions. The counties, more even than the state and the federal, the counties are the ones that are going to actively be helping. You can ask at food banks. You can ask at, at churches. You can ask, at a number of organizations. Say, hey, do you know of any veterans assistance, any veteran support groups? You'd be surprised how many of them are going to go, yeah, we do have this, and you didn't know anything about it. And they go, yeah, we have this, and here's the poster on the wall. Well, you gotta hunt them down. But that's also what I said. Find your VSO, find your veteran service organization, your rep for your county.
You said like where you're at, there are organizations. The county has a representative that they can talk to.
Every county in the U.S. has a VSO.
Okay, all right,
yeah,
great, okay, good. So it's just a matter of raising awareness and figuring out how to get the veterans to know that it exists, and having companies know that it exists so they can share information that can get to the veterans. I suppose that would be good.
Yeah. And I mean, even if you need to go to local VA, ask them for who's our VSO, who's our veteran service rep, where do I find organizations, where do I find support groups, where do I the VA has that information, but they are very bad at advertising. They really are not very good at it. But every county has a veteran rep.
Okay, I think that's really important. We've mentioned that a few times, and I think the more we say it, the better. It's something that the veterans need to know about. Until you told me about it in our previous conversations, I had no idea there was such a thing. And I think there's probably a lot of veterans that didn't know.
Go to internet, go to the library. Ask the librarian. Ask them, how do I find my veteran service rep for our county? Give them a call. Uh, find out if they're going, and these guys also go out to a lot of events, and they may have a table out there. Go to the VFW, go to the American Legion, ask them. They will be bending over backwards to help you find help.
Okay, so it sounds like pretty much any of the traditional veteran service organizations will be able to share this information.
Yeah.
That's great. That's good to know.
And you'd be surprised. Some of these folks have programs with funding that are simply not advertised. I just found out recently, our county that I'm in, the VSOs have an emergency fund that they can help veterans who, for instance, because of something, they need help paying their electric bill in the middle of the winter or something like that. They've actually got funds set aside for that. They just don't advertise it.
So if you're in need, it's definitely worth going to talk to that VSO and see if there's a way that they can help you, even if you need it financially, to help get on your feet. And this kind of goes back to something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to bring up again, because you had said that you got a week free pass with the YWCA. And so if a veteran is applying for a job and they get called for an interview, but you've been homeless and, realistically, probably fairly dirty and may not smell very good. And there's problems with being homeless that are just difficult to deal with. Getting this 1 week free pass or something like that can be a big help to give you a chance to go in and clean up before the interview so that you're actually better prepared.
And so again, I would say talk to your local, like VFW or something, and go, hey, listen, I think I may have a job interview, but do you know any place where I can get some clean clothes? They may go, you know what? We've got a washer and dryer in the back, and we'll find you another pair of jeans and a t-shirt. Not a problem. We can do that for you. We can hook you up with, George here, is co-owner of the local gym, and they'll let you go take a shower there. You'd be surprised. Those local organizations really, really are reaching out. They hunted me down. I was doing something that was totally not veteran connected, but I have a small business, and on my sign it says, veteran owned. And they came up and they said, "You're a veteran?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "Can we talk to you outside of this?" I said, "Sure." They gave me a call, found out all about me, invited me to a luncheon. They really were reaching out. They were looking for vets to help. So
these organizations are veterans helping veterans. That's really what they're there for.
Yeah. I mean, you may have to swallow your pride a little, and accept help, but be aware that they're doing it from the goodness of their heart, not because they're trying to make a buck.
Another thing that we had mentioned is that oftentimes, and this kind of goes to what you just said, of being able to take help and do what you need to do. You talked about reevaluating what work means to you. Because, you were in the military, you had a certain skill. That skill may not be transferable to civilian life. And so you have to kind of redefine what it means and what you're willing to accept as a job in order to find something.
I went from being a major in the Air Force to working part-time at Borders Books, if anybody remembers the bookstore. You're going to have to accept that what you did in the military, there are certain things that are transferable. But a good example, like I said, I worked with veterans, helping them with their transition. And if you were a sniper in the Marine Corps, there is not a direct applicable job in the civilian world. I'm sorry, there isn't. So
it's a SWAT team or something.
Yeah, and yes, absolutely. That's why a lot of military people come out and they go into law enforcement, because it is the most directly applicable job. But what I would sit down with these folks and say is, okay, what made you a good sniper? Attention to detail, patience, ability to listen, ability to follow instructions. And we sat down and we looked for traits. We looked for what their strong points were. Now, based on those, what do you bring to the table for a company? I have excellent attention to detail. I'm capable of listening to instructions once and doing the job right. And by having that becomes part of you may have heard people talk about an elevator speech. So that when you go to talk to an employer or any organization and they ask you about your background, you can say, yes, I did this, this, and this. But then you continue on and you say, what I can bring to your company is this, 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 this. So that you are telling them what you can do for them. You're not just asking what can they do for you. You're offering what you can do for them. And that's what a company wants to hear. They want to hear why are you going to be an asset to the company?
Yeah, so it's a matter of not necessarily taking the exact skill that you had in the military, but rather the things that brought out in you that you learned in order to perform that skill that you can then translate into another position.
Yeah. And I've got to say this to veterans coming out. A lot of your buddies who got out 3, 5, 10 years ago, and they're all going to tell you, you've got the skills to be a project manager starting at $80,000 a year. No, you don't. Nobody does. Nobody comes into a company without extensive experience and starts at a job like that. The economy that existed 5, 10, 15 years ago is not the economy we have now. And if everybody who thinks they can be a project manager was a project manager, we would have nobody working on the projects. They'd all be project managers. You may have to come in and start 3 steps below what you thought you were going to start and show them why you're valuable to the company. That's what's important to a company, is that you come in with a positive attitude and say, I would eventually like to be doing this, but I understand that what you're advertising for is a systems analyst, or you're looking for someone who can be a developer. You may not start here, even though you think you should. I know a lot of people who got out as mid to upper level officers who started at half their pay. And it was a wake up call. And these are folks that had, a lot of contacts and everything, but unless you have a very, very specialized skill. A good example to that would be if you are a computer programmer with a high security clearance. Yes, you can probably start at a very good salary at a defense firm, but not if you want to live in the middle of Iowa someplace. You may have to adjust where you live. You may have to adjust how you live and what your job is. And you're going to have to be flexible. When I was getting out, I was offered a couple really good jobs. And I got out, to let you know, when I got off active duty, I was at McGuire Air Force Base, which is in New Jersey. And I was strongly recruited for the FBI and the 3-letter agencies in DC. Well, that's lovely, except that I was married to an Air Force pilot, and we had orders for Scott Air Force Base in Illinois. So, you have to be flexible. I'm not going to be able to take those really good jobs. I'm going to have to find something in a different location. Or I really want to live near my family that is in, Omaha, Nebraska. Well, that's fine, but then you're going to have to find a job that is in Omaha, Nebraska. Or if you want to take that really good job, but it requires that you be in Phoenix, you're going to have to make a decision. So if you're a parent and you've got kids to support, it may be more important that you find a job than you find the perfect job. The perfect job may come later. In the meantime, you've got rent to pay. And I'm sorry, but that's the situation I found myself in. I had a child to support, had bills to pay. So decide on your priorities and reach out for assistance based on those priorities. You can tell the VSO, look, yes, I'm living in this town, but if somebody needs my job and I need to be 45 minutes that direction, I'll find an apartment over there. You have to be flexible. You have to jump on every opportunity. And the thing I tell people too is I said, okay, if you are looking for a job, that is your job. That is your full-time job right now, is finding a job. You need to be up, dressed, and ready to go by 8 or 9 every single morning. There's no sleeping in until noon. You need to be up. You need to be dressed. You need to be on the phone calling the temp agencies and saying, hey, do you have anything available today? And that means you need to already be dressed so that if they say, yes, can you be there in 30 minutes? You go, absolutely. I'm on my way out the door right now. Again, you want to be the person that the companies want to hire. So you need to be up, pulled together, dressed, and ready to go, and looking and proactively searching for a job all the time, every single morning.
The other thing about having, about being willing to do that, or to take the job that is not even close to what you want, but at least it's a job. It's easier to get a job when you already have a job than it is if you don't.
Yes, absolutely.
Chris, you got anything else there?
No, not unless we touch on it and I might have missed it. But what is the title of your book?
The book that's coming out is called The Single Person's Guide to Preparedness, Prepping for One. And that is coming out in August. One thing I did want to also mention to your folks is, other than just jobs, look for internships, work-study programs, job shadowing opportunities, trade school scholarships. Mike Rowe, who most people know of, has an organization called Rhodes Works, and he gave out more than $3 million in trade school scholarships this year. Think outside the box. Work with organizations, keep your ears open, go to the library, find out what's going on.
We kind of touched on a lot of subjects here, and mostly on trying to find work, a way to translate your skill into something that you can do, willingness to take on a job that maybe it's not really what you want or feel you're qualified for, but it's a starting point. Finding a job is easier if you already have one. Work your way up the scale from there. Be the best employee you can be if you're going to work for someone else, and show them that you're willing to go above and beyond.
And keep that positive attitude.
Yeah.
Even when things don't work out, take a deep breath, take a step back, and dive back in again. Mm-hmm. Don't give up. Don't quit. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. I promise you. I've been there. Time marches on. And having been in the military, the old, doing more with less, you can. You can find a job. You can find an organization. I guarantee you, every single organization in town is looking for volunteers. Okay? If nothing else, go volunteer someplace. And keep your ears open, because that place you're volunteering, they may not be hiring anybody, but you're going to hear people talking. And somebody's going to say, yeah, my husband just went over to such and such, and they suddenly have opened up, a few new jobs. Be the first one in line. Go knock on their door the next morning. I have some friends who the husband was looking for work, and I said, have you gone out and checked at the mill? And they went, well, we went online and we put in an application. I said, no. Go stop in and talk to them at their front desk tomorrow morning. And sure enough, they said, oh yeah, we do have a bunch of applications in there. We just haven't looked at them yet. But while you're here, why don't we do an interview? Be proactive.
Absolutely worth a try. Okay. Well, I think we've pretty well covered it then for today. Mm-hmm. And Lindy, I want to thank you for being with us and sharing all this great information. We want to thank our listeners and viewers. Definitely, please do your like and share and get this word out, because all these points are very important, not only to the veterans that need to hear it, but to the companies that need to learn how to find veterans to hire.
Yeah, the more awareness we have to get the news out there, the better off it's going to be for everybody to give that information. So word of mouth is going to be huge for any of this.
Yeah. And for those that have, obviously, if you're a veteran and you don't have access to a computer, you're not going to be able to even see this podcast probably. But in any case, we will provide links to various organizations that we've mentioned and try and share as much information as we can. So with that, you are quite welcome. Thank you, Lindy. And we'll see you next time.
All right. See you at the next one.
Bye.